I'm a fool. I should probably check the schedules to see when I'm actually going to do a video. Said I was going to see you yesterday. And look at me. Friday. A fool. Hi. This is Vision Denial, and the series is called Clearing Vision. Or specifically, we're going to clear up, or at least we're just going to take an analysis of the game so far in MSI, based off of the myriad of playoff series I've watched in our Road to MSI series. Is this a weird start? It's been a while. I'm rusty. It's been 2 days. Wow, 2 days makes you rusty. Huh, how did I start? Anywho, so it's the second round of MSI. We've gotten our top six. Top four. Top six. And so let's take a look at the damage. We start off the day with what people thought was going to be a banger. Oh, right, before I start... Alright, so to my left and to my right here, I put in what I was expecting this to end as, right? Like what the dust settles from the rumble stage, let's get ready to rumble. This is what I would expect it to be, right? Going, whoop, cameras. First, second, third, and fourth, fifth, sixth. And so far, I'm pretty sure that's actually the current results. Yeah, I actually do think that's actually what the current results are. So, spot on day one predictions? Not really. This is mostly a prediction. These are going to change over time in the next coming 4 extra days that are left before the best of 5. And it's going to be interesting because I think that these games aren't as cut and dry as what the final results are. So let's see what I mean by this, right? We got our first game of the day. Let's take a look. And I like doing this. This is so much fun. We got our Damwon Kia versus our Royal Never Give Up, which were listed as the 2 favorites of the tournament. At least it was for me at the start. It seems to be what everybody expected. And this was interesting because Damwon were playing an early game. They were actually playing an early game. And I was surprised during their finals for the playoffs in LCK that they were playing an early game that was pretty well. And then they went back to being their normal selves and playing not an early game and just waiting till they can team fight somebody to death. But this time they played an early game, and unfortunately they got to feel what it feels like. But the difference is that RNG knew how to absorb the pressure from it. A couple of things. I think that it's unfortunate that despite the pretty solid way that they approach their tempo lead, the pretty strong way that they approach their neutrals, and the leads that they got through their laning phase, especially against this team, that it comes to a point where they overstep and lose a Drake, and that's where it starts, where they start losing a lot of the leads that they established. And as much as I am okay with seeing that they can play an early game, this just shows me that they know how to play a stock standard mediocre early game, mediocre to professional play standards. Because when they got to the 2 to 3k point in the early game, never at any point are they pushing anything to balloon this lead and advance the tempo of the game where they absolutely needed it for the type of composition they have. They often get away with playing early game compositions like their late game compositions, and the first time where they actually approach it the proper way, they don't know how to balloon it to the extent that it's necessary. And RNG noticed this. They absorb everything that is going on and make sure that they don't lose absolute control, and then when they're able to pounce back and get through the mistakes, they're able to shrink the lead completely and take it over. And like, that'd be one thing to say like, oh yeah, sure, we all saw how that happened, but the issue here is not like, yes, we saw RNG stop a strong early game setup that Damwon did. No, RNG literally bided their time by playing how their win conditions were supposed to go. There was nothing there about like RNG stole something. No, they were just not challenged at any point. At no point did RNG feel pressured to actually do anything because they were letting their win conditions come through at any given point. And then when they wanted to contest Damwon's Drake, if I remember correctly, at the 18-minute mark? Yeah, it was the 18-minute mark. Well, then RNG saw that they were able to keep up the way that they were playing. And Damwon just like lost control at that point. And it shows the huge difference and like huge gap in ability that exists here. RNG was not like, oh, we're behind for a little bit and then boom, we just won, in the same way that like Damwon is put into this position. RNG were able to keep up their consistency the entire time, and when Damwon is the one that slipped up, RNG just kept going as business as usual. They upped their tempo. They ended up just gaining 3k lead from sequential fights that are accustomed to the LPL, and were able to get their Baron and clean out efficiently. Like they, sure, Damwon get to know what that feels like from the other side at this point, but they look remarkably different because Damwon relies on team fights to get them through to get a close near the end, while RNG play to their win conditions, and when the team messes up on the other side, they're just going to keep sticking to their win conditions and then get the balloon much faster. It definitely seems on the surface like they functionally look the same, right? Like if you were to look at a stat sheet, they look the same. But upon looking at the approach or analyzing the approach to the game, huge difference, because you don't expect RNG to be coming back from a game that they're like pretty behind and have no control over. RNG came back from just keeping up. With that, RNG ended up at 1-0 because they were able to clean closely. Fantastic. And Damwon end up at 0-1, which I think a lot of people will be disappointed by. Like, this was the way for them to confirm that, yes, they are at the point of being world champions still. I don't know if that's a fair remark. MSI is only a partial indicator of which region is stronger. It's also still day one, so we'll see, right? With that, we're going to go to... Oh, did it too tiny. There we go. Perfect. With that, we got our next game of boys from EU, Mad Lions, versus... Oh, not them. Pentanet GG from Australia, or from Oceania. Now, Oceania, Australia, Pentanet. I get it, right? You are like way too deep in now a tournament that you have not no business. No, you fairly earned the position that, like, the position you're in, but that you are woefully like underskilled, or at least not prepared to face off against, I would say, the vast majority of the teams here. And you're in a position where you can go like, maybe we get a game off of Cloud9, maybe PSG, but like not any of the top three, right? And so you have nothing to lose. You're gonna try anything that you want. And honestly, sure, go ahead, but Chaz, please, can ya do something that synergizes with your composition more. Like pick out the wild cards. Do something like absolute bananas. I would love it. Fantastic. Absorb people into your chaos. But you take like an you take a like a late game champ that takes forever, levels, gold, and items to properly function with an early game composition, and it just fails like spectacularly. Like you get some brilliant moments here with this composition, but it's not great. The composition literally is what made the downfall of this, because you respond very well to Mad in this game. And Mad, your play this today is concerning. Like you're getting the results. I'm not gonna lie. Like I can't say, oh, you should do better, and you're like up in wins. But you should do better. Uh, let's break it down here, right? So, sure, this game looked like a lot of fun for the two of them. Matt had a pretty solid early game play. They had their early game tempo, and they had the proper vision for this, but they were never focusing to their win conditions. If I see here, yeah, they played a Vayne, which I think I've mentioned this a dozen times before in some of these videos. I'll mention it a dozen times more. If you're picking Vayne, you're telling me you think that you're way better than your lane opponent by like a landslide. And you know what? Sure. Maybe. But this is still pretty bold, especially when there's still so many options that existed left. That being said, there was no way that the bot lane was being played for at any, like during this entire early game. They were playing for the top side of the map, where they were trying to, I imagine, shut down Urgot, which, like, sure, Pyopanther is a spectacular player on Urgot, but his composition was going to fail by just properly putting the gold in your own composition. It worked out because you had a better bot lane, but I think your game would have been less messy if that was the case. The vision wasn't great for the vast majority of the game for both sides. I understand it's hard to contest for vision when there's fighting nonstop and just go, 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 go. But nothing was like consistently established at any given point for any proper decisions to be made. The ballooning of the lead took a long time for it to happen from Mad. And I think this is because Pentanet properly like sucked in the chaos that they needed so that there was not that kind of focus on actually like working for the objectives of the game or for what their win conditions is supposed to be. And I think Pentanet, you should leverage this more often. Just keep leveraging the chaos out of the game. It'll bite you in the butt more times than none, but at the same time, it's the best way that you've shown so far that you can win games. Like, I wish that you guys would play a little bit, not standard, but more like to a more synergistical composition, because you guys make some very interesting decisions across this entire game. It's really unfortunate. But at least you're showing that Mad also do the same, well, not the same kind, but like similar enough bizarre decisions. I wrote over here like, yeah, so there's bizarre map movements from Mad, and PGG aren't answering the best, but they're still punishing. So you do understand and you do recognize, and I'm not saying this like in a pandering way, like they do recognize that they are like, that Mad are playing this out in some very shortcutty ways. They're skipping steps, and they're establishing themselves as like, we know we can punish this properly. It's just not clean, and it's a little sloppy in points. I'm not super worried for Mad. I'm worried a little bit in terms of like the inconsistency early and mid game, but so far there are still enough times where they're closing. is clean enough for me to go, all right, that's fine. Like from this game at least. Later in, it's so there's that. With that, Mad goes 1-0 and Pendanet goes 0-1. Next on the docket, we have our friends at PSG. Hey, look at them. Versus the world champions Damwon. And this is the game that Damwon needed to win to prove that they were not just, you know, kind of smurfing in their group and that they should have been more challenged than others. Because, gosh, this was a really rough game. I'm not gonna lie. Granted, like, this shows a lot of good out of Paris Saint-Germain. Like, PSG Talons had a fairly solid approach to the game against Damwon in the early game, as per usual with Damwon. But I think Damwon really showed that they were trying to mess around less. Does that make sense? Let's break down this one. I'm losing pens all over the place. Alright. So, you can tell that Damwon is still trying to play early games because of the way that they approach the level 1 vision or the jungle tracking vision that they do. Right? And you can tell that they have a larger focus on this because Paris Saint-Germain, during the vast majority of the early game, don't have enough vision aggressively, and the vision that they do have that is defensive has lots of pockets and holes to them. And it's not one of those cases where it's a reset or they just used it and it was just cleared. They clearly still had wards ready for them to use, or ability to like play the vision game. It's just was not solid. Then comes into the problems though that because Damwon knows what the steps are, they still fumble very hard. And it's really easy for people to punish in Damwon's like poor execution of their early game, regardless of knowing what the proper steps are. So they get a lead from a contest against Herald. Both sides still play the neutral objective game pretty poorly, by the way, just so that we get this out of the way. And where was it? Right. So, because of the bad contest for Herald, PSG gained the tempo lead. They set themselves up with proper wave manipulation and upping the tempo so that they're able to keep up that lead the entire time. But just like the game that Damwon played early on, they weren't ballooning the lead well enough from the PSG side. And this is where Damwon take advantage of something else than what RNG did against them. Damwon used their team fighting around the neutrals more than they wait for them to make a mistake, because this wasn't like a question of PSG poorly setting up, because both sides were poorly setting up these neutrals. The approach to this fight, let me see if I can see it. There was a fight at 17 minutes 26 seconds. That fight plays out very differently than the fight that happened the first game of the day, where the switch happened. And do I have the time? No, I don't have the time to edit the two, but if you have the chance, you look at the approach in which both of those teams take those fights, and you can tell there's like a sense of eagerness out of the side of Damwon more than anything else to punish and to get the fights through. While as for RNG, it's more of a, this is what the actual setup is for the neutral objective. And so they just played it out as they're supposed to. Damwon is trying to flex and use skill expression, and RNG is just going through a step-by-step process. And Paris Saint-Germain, unfortunately, as well as they were able to play out the laning, as well as they were able to play the wave manipulation, and they knew how to play to their win conditions, the fact that they didn't balloon their lead enough means that they weren't able to team fight in a way that was significant to contest these objectives, because they're not a stronger, they're a weaker team fighting team than Damwon, or at least on average, right? Um, because of it, Damwon were able to get the Baron and then balloon the lead in the late or in the mid game to close it out efficiently, as Damwon does. Damwon will keep closing out of leads from coming back from nowhere, as they do all the time, right? So it's not to be surprising. With that, Damwon play from their second game, they tie it out there at 1-1, and PSG is at 0-1. And then we're just going to, well, come on, there we go. We're going to take to our next game, which is where we have, oh yeah, Cloud9, our awkward child, where we know that Pentanet are the goofballs, Cloud9 are the kid that keeps getting picked on in the family despite trying so hard, but they're still not good enough for the family. Was that harsh? That's pretty harsh. It's pretty harsh. It's still harsh. I mean, come on, guys. You did so well. So well. So well in the early game. Except you didn't do very well in the early game. You did pretty badly. I think that as cool as the idea that you had for your composition here, that it still required that you play to your win condition more. Okay, so you'd say, but what? They had the Malphite on the weak side, and they kept it on the weak side this entire time. Sure, the issue here is that, their win condition isn't mid lane Lee Sin. They didn't play to the bot side. They had a Tristana. They really needed the Tristana to be mobilized to move through lanes, to be able to get the turrets. It's a 5v5 siege composition with the ability to transition to neutral objectives very easily, and that was never approached. Never, right? It became really clear that Cloud9 has no intentions of using any of their players efficiently. And I mean this in they want to use perks as a carry, but not put them on anything that is enabling as a carry. They just put him on solo Q picks. And it's not just, but they're putting him on a solo QS carry setup. And it's not efficient to what they're trying to establish. They put Fudge on a lot of awkward situations and play rarely to his side of the map, and when they do, it's not to anything, it's to the detriment of C9. And this game expresses it the best because they have a solid enough bot lane that they don't do anything with. And I mean, I'm not going to talk about Blabber. Blabber is just the biggest disappointment out of what is supposed to be the strongest player in NA, yet perks included. Whatever, perks or Blabber, I barely felt your existence in this game. RNG, on the other hand, guys, I thought you guys were no longer goofing off. This felt very much like a goof off. And you can tell that they changed their attitude when C9 was about to get their Baron. Because RNG have straight up good tracking and early tempo lead. They realize that they're not ballooning very well, so they up the pressure. They absorb any proactivity that C9 puts up, and hold control of the entire map until it starts ballooning better. They don't just stick to the lead and just do the standard. They literally up the tempo little by little by little. And this is what it shows when you have an early game strategy and it thrives, because this is, I think, the only successful early game composition that showed leads in the early game. It's too bad that they really got overexcited and overzealous. If I remember correctly, yeah, it was something at the 20-minute mark, at the 22-minute mark, at the 24-minute mark, RNG were overzealous, and Cloud9 rightfully punished them, and they did well to punish them. Like, Cloud9 is aware of how to answer all of these things, but they're always just like a step too slow, or the way that they're answering leads to nowhere, and they don't push any particular advantages to like shrink any lead that they would have had. They do punish a really inefficient Baron out of them, and were, when they got to, I think like it's a 20, yeah, between the 22 to 24-minute mark, they are finally established, like using the composition the way that it's intended to be used. Until, RNG realized that they should be using their composition the way that it's intended to be used. As a 1-4 composition. And split push. To win the game. And like, I'd be more enthused to see a 1-4 composition being used properly, because my god, are they ever so infrequently used properly. But like, I'm so annoyed by this whole, we need to really dedicate to like everybody going for this Baron, when unfortunately in the matter at hand is that you could have sent 2 back and still been able to contest this Baron, or made sure that they didn't get Baron, right? You allowed yourself to just get pushed in this hard and had one Udyr stop almost all of your backs. It was like, it was a poor response for something that like Cloud9 like did right on punishing a lot of these like overzealous and overexcited movements and plays by RNG. And then all of a sudden when RNG are playing to the way that they're supposed to, because most regions don't play 1-4 compositions properly. I think the LPL is the only place that I see a 1-4 composition being played properly on a consistent basis. That most other regions don't have the practice on how to respond to a side laner. Or like a split pusher. Just actually split pushing. Because it's not the dominant strategy to the teamfight meta, despite the fact that it is a fairly effective strategy to teams that are slow and poor to respond. It was a fairly easy enough answer for them to do, for it to not end the way that it did. But RNG keeps up their dominant lead. I'm not surprised. I'm not even excited by the prospect of the fact that RNG are on their track already to be undefeated. I doubt they will be undefeated, but they look like they're on their way to do so. They're 2-0 and C9 start their day 0-1. I could have said that was fun, but it was, no, the game was fun. It was pretty exciting. I liked it. I'm just a little meh about the way that it ended. What was next? Oh, PSG is not angled. Well, it doesn't matter because they're the ones that are next. We got Paris Saint-Germain versus Pentanet. And this game to me expresses to me how close 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place are to me in my head. And like, sure, I placed it as Mad Lions, Damwon, and then Paris Saint-Germain in that order. But the way that Mad played against Pentanet and the way that Paris Saint-Germain played against Pentanet is a huge and clear indication of the way that both teams approach the game, as well as how cleanly and efficiently they want to think about it. The only difference is that I think that Mad Lions are just slightly better at ballooning leads than Paris Saint-Germain, but they're not as clean and their decisions are still bizarre to me. Also, again, Chaz, would it kill you to pick a champion that works with your composition? Please. Hell, if you picked Camille here, because Camille mid has been a thing, and it's not like it's in, like, not meta, it's still getting bans. Like, I would have been enthused, it would have been a much better pick. It would have been a lot more solid for the team fights. Anything mid. Anything mid that doesn't just be like, I am an assassin that does zero utility. Because the way that this team approaches like pick and ban is solid. Like I have no major complaints outside of the fact that like they're just making their compositions more complicated for whatever they pick for Chaz. And you guys can still be weird and pick compositions that are, functional with themselves. That being said, I don't think the composition that PSG has is like all that great either. I mean, it's much better because it doesn't have a Z. But it is still a very awkward composition. There's like a little bit of I don't want to say anti-synergy, but anti-synergy. Like the Aatrox and the Philios have a very disjointed time. The way that they fight is very disjointed from each other, so it's not always the best setup for it. But this was a pretty one-sided game, like a really one-sided game, like disgustingly one-sided. And to Pentanet's credit, they tried. They really did try. It shows that they had a lot more effort than the next game we had. That's not true, but like there's a lot of effort that's put here. This is the best that I've seen PSG balloon their lead in the entire tournament, just bar none. Just the entire tournament, this is the best one. I think it helps that they're playing against a team that, by all rights and marks, would probably go to the Vietnamese representatives, but like, if we're going to compare them to the other teams, Paris Saint-Germain is still finishing games against Penchanet faster than Mad Lions and more efficiently, and I still think with like a little bit of overzealousness that is being punished every so often. But this was like a 7K lead at 12 minutes. That's kind of ludicrous. This Paris Saint-Germain had incredible vision denial the entire time, or not the entire time, but a very large chunk of the time Pentanet are playing blind. And so like the information that you can glean from that is just nothing. Absolutely nothing. And everything else that PSG is really good for is still there, right? They have great wave manipulation, solid understanding of when to do their neutral objectives and which ways to put their how to play into their win conditions. They had very good neutrals this game. It surprised me. Very happy to see it, but it's very good. And yeah, I wrote here the only thing Pentanet was doing here was that Pentanet's comp was showing its weaknesses. Also, Pradith, are you okay? You ran, I won't say ran it down, but you had a couple of moments there where you're trying to play hero and it didn't work out super well. I hope you're okay. Like that I can imagine this kind of game being pretty brutal, especially if it's like if people are expecting Cloud9 and PSG to be the teams that might be upsetted by you guys, and this is how you like the kind of game you got from it. Not great. Although PSG got a close, pretty clean Baron and a very good close at 22 minutes. It was very solid. Super appreciated it. I have very little complaints outside of like, don't be super overzealous, guys. Just like you can chill out and actually play the game properly. But I see that like that might not happen until the best of 5 section. So we're just gonna get more messy games for the next 4 days after this. And with that, PSG and 1-1 are tied with Damwon Kia if it wasn't for the head-to-head matchup. And PGG goes 0-2. Alright, and then the last game of the day is the coveted NA versus EU matchup. Coveted or dreaded, depends on who you're talking to. Because it might be dreaded regardless of the side you're talking to. Because this was not really a game, more, Jaif, the whenever Bart's getting beat up, is like, stop it, he's dead already. I don't know how much I want to analyze this game in terms of anything other than C9. What the fuck? Okay, I'm gonna tell you what I told Chaz. Like, can you pick something that actually helps your composition? Like, if your rumble is mid, right, then you're able to play around the actual camps to have, like, Kindred get a lead. Oh, I put the punks in the wrong side. What am I doing with myself? There we go. There we go. Yeah, like, why are you putting Kindred mid here? Why are you picking Kindred at all? What is the gain out of Kindred in this situation? Right? It is a solo queue pick. Cool. It is a solo queue pick that has a very fast or famine situation, that is very dependent on the amount of marks that it gets, that it usually spawns off of camps and scuttles, that you, as a mid laner, have a very hard time accessing. Like, sure, if they come up on the Raptors and you are ahead, great. The issue is that Kindred is just straight up garbage at farming Raptors. And so, like, I'm left here baffled as to what were you going to do? Roam to the Gromp? Roam to, like, the Wolves? Which are the two easiest camps? Like, what was the goal with this champion? It used your ultimate 3 times. You were crowd controlled most of the time when this happened. This was by far, and I've been watching a lot of games from 11.5 to now, right? I think the first video so far from the road to MSI is like somewhere in like mid-April, or like early, yeah, it's like super early April, and I'm here going, I've been watching playoff games since then. I've seen a lot of stupid picks, and this is by far the stupidest pick I have ever seen so far. I cannot comprehend. And I was like, at first, alright, I don't understand what it's supposed to do here. I don't understand if it's supposed to help deny neutral objectives and, like, get a better setup for yourselves on a lot of these situations. But as such, why isn't it the jungler then? Okay, cool. You've got Rumble in the jungle. Put something else AD in mid lane. You've got a variety of options that exist still. You could have picked Aatrox if you wanted to be unorthodox about something. You could have picked, like, so many things. You could have picked Urgot. Like, be creative, but don't be stupid. Like, I'm really harshing on this because what was Perch going to do when they fell behind, like, 3k gold lead, like at 6 minutes? Elyoya is 5-0-1. There is, like, this was a terrible start. They get the crab fight at 4 minutes. They lose 3k. Mad literally takes this and runs wild with it, right? And given the composition they have here, you've got a Rumble, Kalista, Nautilus, and Scion. Great. Like, your Rumble literally has a spike in mid-game, and it really needs items to be able to keep up. Not a great start comparing, like, the fact that it's already jack shit against this Udyr that's going to ruin your life. This Kalista has, like, an early game spike and then spikes for neutral objectives. But if you can never get to the neutral objectives, your Kalista is just there standing like, what the fuck am I going to do? You got a Nautilus. Nautilus are great at engaging. I have no problem with the Nautilus. The Nautilus is going to do whatever it wants early, mid, late game, behind, or ahead. It's just there. It's probably going to die faster if you're behind. Whatever. And then you have your Scion. Your Scion is a great front line, but it doesn't do anything to, like, help anything. It helps, like, enable and follow up on Nautilus's engage, but the fact that Rumble and Kalista can't get forward to do anything from this from being so behind, your Kindred is literally useless. You couldn't even get to the point where your range increases. And I'm not going to talk about how, like, Mad Lions literally was not doing this very efficiently. This was, like, a very inefficient Baron, and a very sloppy close out of them. And they had, other than that, Mad, like, solid on their vision. They had a great stranglehold on neutral objectives and you to make sure that they weren't going to, like, overstay themselves. So they didn't have to, like, do immaculate neutral objective setup, but, like, they had 11k gold at, like, the 20-minute mark. And they kept letting, Mad Lions kept giving away things like the shutdowns to Cloud9 and a lot of opportunities for them to do that. But regardless of the fact that they kept throwing themselves in, it doesn't show that the Kindred would have done anything. And I'm going to be making this a sticking point. Do I think that if they picked something else they would have won? No. Given the situation that they were put in, this is, like, for sure a done deal. Mad would probably still won virtually the same way, but it wouldn't have been so extreme. Right? And when things like this happen, it gives me a small indicator that Cloud9 don't have as strong as an understanding on the meta as it may look. And by all accounts, they beat still Damwon legitimately. They still made themselves up here legitimately in ways that, like, are impressive in some cases, but they're still super shaky on way more because this is a trend of theirs. They're depending themselves on star players and high skill expression that they cannot live up to and put themselves in positions that are very difficult to approach. And so I find myself questioning, do they know what they're doing? And, like, for some of you, the answer is yes. Of course they know what they're doing. So then, why the fuck are they doing something else? If you're going to be creative to try to outdo your opponent because you either think they're better or because you think this is the best way to do so, please, for the love of God, again, like I mentioned to Chaz, make sure it synergizes and it does something for you even when behind. Meta champs are meta for a reason. Play around that, not to be cheeky. Just because it works in solo queue doesn't mean it works in professional. The fuck? That game just, it legitimately had me fuming. I was laughing, but I was also fuming on the inside. Because, like, Pentanet doing this is one thing. Right? Pentanet are in a position where they're just trying their best against teams that have stronger control as I put away these little guys. And I'm not changing the ranking here. Based off of what I've seen here, nothing changes the status quo of what I put as the ranking here. As I was saying, Pentanet I expect to make picks and bans that are bizarre, right? The region in and of itself is cookie cutter safe, very predictable in terms of what kind of compositions they like to play, with random curveballs being there for the memes primarily, and when they come internationally they play for the memes. Expected. I understand that. It's like, it's whatever. I would prefer that they start memeing things that make more sense for their composition, but meme away. Cloud9 though, you guys are trying to show that your region is legitimately still, like, worth being a legacy region. Because no one questions that the Pacific, the PCS, is still a legacy region, right? No one questions that they still deserve to be in the top 2 regions, right? No one questions them that because, like, they have a world championship under their belt, this region. They still have, like, title winners from, like, different particular competitions, like non-Riot and Riot sanctioned. They have, like, a legacy behind them, and North America doesn't. And you can't show yourself to be taken seriously when you pick shit like this. Get your shit kicked in. And then, like, 3 days later, come back and then things are okay. And you guys are doing things that make sense. And you're competitive all of a sudden. This can't be a thing. You can't be learning what the meta is halfway in. You have to be opting in immediately, on board, and ready to compete. And you weren't. This was a long rant. Mostly, I opted in for my final thoughts. I already said, not really replacing this. There's not much to explain other than, like, cool, yes, RNG is still top. These two here, bozos, are still contesting between each other, but the Damwon still seem to do whatever. Paris Saint-Germain is clearly fourth. Cloud9 needs to catch up, and the Pentadent is just Pentadent. Cool? You guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm winded. That really took... No, honestly, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And if anybody says that, you know, lift the import rule, nothing about the import rule being lifted would have fixed this. I'm going to be putting, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Over here, I'm going to be putting in the Road to MSI series that I put up, that I have, where I watched all 12 regions playoff series, which is how I give my educated opinion and analysis of the current games that are in MSI. I watched 76 playoff series. I have some backing on this one. And then over here is the playlist to so far Clearing Vision. The playlist for so far every day that I've watched of MSI at this point. Usually comes out on the day that it's supposed to. I really appreciate all of you who are watching. And I'll see you all, because I'll be watching them live tomorrow. Ciao.